just want to show a couple things on Bitcoin here, and just give some insight on more of a shorter term trading basis. And so again, you had the great move up. I caught most of it. I sold half at 31,000. We talked about this on Crypto Town Hall. My next sell was at 34,000, where I unloaded the remaining position of that. And the only reason, by the way, I wasn't long on Bitcoin until we got through this downsloping trend line right here. Once we broke that downsloping trend line, that was a trend change. It kind of broke above there. And then I got long kind of in this 27,000 range, rode it up there. Now, I did pull the trigger on a short, but again, remember, folks, I'm a shorter term trader. So I'm short at 35,175. The target here is just a classic retrace to the breakout level. So as a technician, you really don't want to ever be just a perma bull or perma bear, right? And so what you want to notice here is that you've now broken this high going back here, and I could even drag that trend line back further and further, and it gets into some major levels going back to the bull market lows of 2021. So this was a major break point. And so essentially, once you've broken it, we now have to respect that as resistance broken, which now means it's support. And therefore, my target on a short, if it gets in that range of like 31.5, 32, I'll step aside. I'm not sure if I'll go long, but needless to say, you would remain bullish unless you trade back below that level. Now, that would be the kiss of death, in my opinion. If Bitcoin starts trading back below 30,000, for instance, that would be very problematic in the overall chart. Just asking you guys your opinions here. Do you think that we ever see 20,000 on Bitcoin again, or are we now is this kind of the next bull market where pullbacks will be more shallow?
I don't think so. I think that, listen, okay, let me rephrase that. Nothing's in absolutes. I would say that there's a 90 to 10 chance that we don't see it again at this point, or even 80-20 if I want to be a little more reasonable and not as ridiculously bullish. You just alluded to it now. We kept talking about if we lose 25, we're going to 20. Once you're above the yearly high and that sort of 31,500 level, now you say, oh crap, if we lose 31, we're going to 25, right? So now we've got a long way to go before 20, and it's going to take a hell of a lot of selling to get there. And I just don't see the sellers in the market right now. It's very clear that there is a bid on Bitcoin right now, right? And it's a small asset. It mostly maybe travels in correlation at certain times, but it does have low liquidity, low volume. And when you get enough interest, it can clearly travel a different path than everything else. So I'm really looking at Bitcoin in a vacuum right now. Maybe I'll pay for that in the not so distant future. But for now, I look at this chart, I look at what's happening fundamentally, and I say, this thing wants to go up, right? Yep. And I'm not going to fight it.
I'm always worried to say never. So I'd show you my screen. To me, my base case is the S&P 500 goes down to about 3,000. So that's pretty significant for some people. But for other people, when you overlay with copper, it's nothing. It's just going back to normal reversion. There's good reason for that here. No, it happens in recession. Stocks go down. Sorry to give people the bad news, but and we're pretty high probability we're going to have that. So the key thing is if we can take wealth away from most risk assets, the S&P 500 go down, the number one beta measure in the world. And if Bitcoin just stays the same price, that's pretty significant. What's been happening lately is very impressive that it's going up and the stock market goes down. But we all know because the minute you launch that ETF, it might change a little. So I think with the way you've got it, Gareth and Scott, you both focus maybe more on the trading in the long term. Yes, this is showing what most of us expected to do over time. Decline in supply, increase in demand and the adoption, price must go up over time. But it's getting past this recession, and this, what I fully expect is just a bit of reversion and wealth creation. And so far, so good. But again, it's to me, this chart to me shows the bigger picture. You're going to have a normal crash in the stock market. If Bitcoin can just stay buoyant in that environment, that's great. The key thing is we're not going to get that liquidity from the Fed, at least for quite a while.
Not getting the liquidity from the Fed. I agree that unless something severely breaks. Gareth, if we go to 20, man, at this point, I don't like to do this on a show, but like I'm selling the kids, I'm selling the cars, I'm selling the house, and I'm getting it all into Bitcoin at that point. Sorry, kids. I love
a kidney too.
I'll buy you back with my profits.
Various financial institutions and experts have shared their Bitcoin price predictions tied to the anticipation of a Bitcoin exchange-traded fund ETF. Skybridge Capital, co-founded by Anthony Scaramucci, is notably bullish, predicting prices between $150,000 and $250,000 post-SEC ETF approval. Some are more conservative, estimating $150,000, while others, like Standard Chartered, see a range of $50,000 to $150,000. CryptoQuant's prediction falls in between at $50,000 to $73,000. Introduction of a Bitcoin spot ETF is eagerly awaited, with no confirmed launch date. Positive developments such as BlackRock's influence and Grayscale's legal wins add to optimism, but the final decision rests with the SEC. Some experts suggest an approval by year-end. Currently, Bitcoin trades at $34,186, showing a slight drop over the last 24 hours, potentially due to decreased trading activity. Its movement is confined between $34,507 and $33,900, with a possible decline to $33,500 if it drops below the 50-day moving average. Bitcoin has recently seen a 20.27% price increase following news about BlackRock's Bitcoin spot ETF application. The leak suggests that President Joe Biden is calling tech executives to the White House to introduce new regulations, which could spill over into the crypto industry. According to the Washington Post, this order will come just before an international summit in the UK addressing AI's societal implications. The order will require comprehensive assessments for advanced AI models before they can be used by federal employees. Initial reports hint at classifying computational resources as a national resource, which could affect Bitcoin mining by cloud computing giants like Google. The leak mainly focuses on AI, but the crypto community is watching closely for potential regulatory and market price effects. Let's continue our discussion.
IBTC on the DTCC website, and then it wasn't listed, and then the website was down, and then people didn't know if it was listed. Comes to find out that it had been listed there since August, and that was basically a nothing burger, but furthered the idea that BlackRock will already be seeding a fund, starting to buy in advance of an approval. And I think that that's what's happening here. Either way, regardless of the narrative, it's incredible to see this divergent strength when everything else seems to be dropping. You look at these weekly candles here, just going into overbought RSI. On lower time frames, that's when a lot of people start to get concerned. But on higher time frames, that's when the party usually starts. You get into these overbought conditions. You can look back in 2020. Bitcoin hit overbought around 12,000, went to 69,000 while staying overbought, if you look to that, right? So pulled a casual 5-ish or more X from that point. So that doesn't really concern me. I think we're going to consolidate here under 35,000. If we get another push, then I think we'll get some retracement. So I'm not rushing to buy at $35,000 or $34,000 Bitcoin, but I do think that the trend has switched. We made a higher high at 25,000. We broke the yearly high at 31,800. You can't fade that mentally, I think. That's when you start to see sentiment change.
Do you think, so one of my questions would be, do you think that the Bitcoin spot ETF is being factored in now, meaning that when that news does hit, it'll have a minimal impact on price, or do you still think there's another whole leg up when that gets approved?
At this point, I think there's another whole leg up, and that's actually contrary to what I believed before I saw what happened the last 2 weeks with all of this sort of fake news, But my opinion is either way, obviously, Bitcoin has gone into a buy the dip sort of market. I wouldn't be looking to short an asset that's just breaking through key levels. So you're looking for dips to buy, not rips to short. That's the opposite of stops. I'm looking for strength to sell into in the stock market. Here, I'm looking for strength to, for weakness to buy into on Bitcoin. So it's just it's very strange to be talking about them in such opposite terms, but that really is my view. I think that it's, you hear buy the rumor, sell the news. I think we buy the rumor and then buy the dip that comes after the news if it comes.
Nice. Mike, what is your take on it? What do you think? What do you think's going on here?
Well, I think, Scott, to me, what you just said, Scott, is very profound. Is it really, I think, is an example of how market sentiment has shifted. We've been looking for a sign of a divergent strength. We got it. And this is what I show you is I like to show you a bit of a long-term chart. Is Bitcoin's obviously breaking above that 30,000 level. Now it's good support. I think you can see responsive buyers below there, particularly as the stock market pressures all assets lower, which I think is going to continue in a normal recession. What I show you in this chart is something that Dave Weisberger has been talking about forever, is this rapidly rising hash rate. So the strength of the market. And then just one thing that's kind of unique is maybe what's happening in Bitcoin is what you see here. This is a downward measure of total holdings of gold ETFs in ounces. So that metric, I think someday is going to show up in Bitcoin. There'll be a total holding of Bitcoin in ETFs. But this is quite significant for Bitcoin. But I want to just tilt over for a few other things if I can, and just show a few charts real quick, and then we'll go back on. This is a key thing about today's number. GDP, real GDP around 5% was quite significant, but our economists on along said they're short-term things. It's inventory, it's fiscal stimulus. It's very unlikely to continue and manage. And I think her point is by the end of this year, that's going to be tilted towards recession. Now, that's only a few months left. The number one thing I think is going to matter, as Scott pointed out, is that simple little 200-day moving average in the S&P 500. We finally broke below it. Remember that little kiss? That was a kiss of death. We all knew it. You kind of saw it. It was a classic trader's inverse. And I see you smiling because sometimes as a trader, you think.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more daily updates. Remember, knowledge is power, and we're here to empower you on your financial journey. Until next time, happy investing.